Alrighty, to continue our discussion on 2.8, let us look at these functions here. M of x is equal to the square roots of x plus 8. N of x is equal to x minus 5. P of x is equal to x squared minus 9x. Q of x is equal to 1 over x minus 10. And R of x, that's a 9, by the way. R of x is equal to the absolute value of 2x plus 3. All right, and if I ask you to come up with sorry, I got lost in my notes. That's right. Okay. All right. So if I ask you these, I write it like this. This means Q of, that's a little open circle, P of X. Remember, this can be rewritten as Q of P of X. All right. So basically, I take this second function and I plug it into the first function. So I'm going to take what my P is. I'll take what P is, which is x squared minus 9, and I'm going to plug it in to my x inside my Q function. So that's going to be 1 over x squared minus 9x, because I replaced x with this guy, minus 10. There is a second question that then goes with this, and it asks, what is the domain? So you got to figure out what is the restriction here. This is a fraction. 0 cannot happen on the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom of the denominator. We're going to set it equal to 0 to figure out what x cannot be. So remember, this is a trinomial in which you can factor. Remember, a trinomial factors into two binomials. The leading term is going to be an x. And then you just got to figure out what multiplies to -10 and add up to -9. Hopefully you come up with 10 and 1, and hopefully you see it's -10 and plus 1. Then we set these factors equal to 0. And we see x cannot be 10 or x cannot be -1. So to write this in interval notation, you write negative infinity all the way to the smallest value of x that it cannot be, which in this case is -1, union -1 to the next value that x cannot be, which in this case is 10, union 10 to infinity. And that is what the domain is in interval notation. So this is the first part of the answer. This is the second part of the answer, meaning what's the function and then what's the domain. All right, so using these exact same equations, let's do another example. Let's look at Q of M of X. And again, when it's written like this, remember this can just be Q of M of X, where I'm plugging in the second function into the first function. So if I go back, I'm now going to take this function right here. I'm going to take this function right here, which is the M, and I'm going to plug it into the Q function right there. So I come back over here, and this now becomes 1 over, instead of an x, it'll be whatever the M was, which in this case is the square root of x plus 8. And then minus 10. All right, and that's it. That's as far as you can go with it. But to determine the restriction on the domain, there's two things going on. One, your square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. So we'll take this x plus 8 as greater than or equal to 0. But then the entire equation can't be 0. So I got to figure out x plus 8 minus 10 cannot equal 0. So this has two restrictions. This guy has to be greater than or equal to 0. The entire thing can't be 0. So let's solve this one. Well, let's solve this one first. I would simply just subtract x, or 8, sorry. So x must be greater than or equal to negative 8. That's the first restriction. Over here, to figure out what x cannot be, I would add 10. So you get the square root of x plus 8 cannot equal 10. Then I would square both sides. So x plus 8 cannot equal 100. Then I would subtract 8. So x cannot be 92. So x has to be greater than or equal to negative 8, but then also can't be 92. So the way we write this domain out is the farthest left number in this case would be negative 8. So it has to be greater than or equal to negative 8, can't be less than that. And because it can be 0, in this case, if I made this 0, that would just give me 0 minus 10. So that I can have a bracket for negative 8. It will go all the way to 92, but then it can't be 92, so it would get a parentheses, union 92 all the way to infinity. So now you're stating x has to be greater than negative 8, but it can't be 92. So you've included all the numbers greater than negative 8 and then took out 92 by writing it this way. And really just finding the domain is probably the trickiest thing. All right, so let's do another one. Let's say I want you to find f of g of x and its domain. Okay, so let's say f of x is equal to x over x plus 4, and g of x is equal to 3 over x squared minus 1. So again, remember f of g of x can be rewritten as f of g of x. So I'm going to take the g of x function and I'm going to plug it into the f of x function. So again, I'm going to take the whole thing, and I'm going to replace this x and this x. So I get something wonky like this. I get 3 over x squared minus 1 over, so that replaced the first x. Now I'm going to replace the second x with also 3 over x squared minus 1 plus 4. Now here's where it gets wonky. That got too many fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add these guys. So you can always put a whole number over 1. And what we're going to do is when you're adding fractions, I'm trying to think, I'm going to crisscross straight across. This would probably be the quickest. So I'm going to leave the top as it is for right now. And then this becomes 3 plus, and then you can take the 4 times this. So this would be 4x squared minus 4. So I took the 4 and I distributed it all over x squared minus 1. All I did was I distribute that 4, then kind of rewrote it. All right, now I can do keep it, change it, flip it. So I'm going to keep the first fraction as 3 over x squared minus 1, change the multiplication, flip the second fraction. All right, and when you do this, you see that the x squared minus 1's cancel. So I now have 3 over, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this. This is going to be 4x squared minus 1. So this is your actual answer. But to find the domain, remember on a fraction, the denominator can't equal 0. So this is the first part. The second part, to find the domain, we'll set the denominator to not equal 0 to figure out what 0 cannot be. So I'll add 1 and then divide by 4. I get 1/4. And then the square root of that gives me, well, remember when I take the square root of something, don't forget the plus or minus. That's going to give me plus or minus the square root of 1/4. But the square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's plus or minus 1/2. So to write the domain out, this would be negative infinity to negative 1/2 union negative 1/2 to 1/2 union 1/2 to infinity. I need to give myself enough room. These are all 2's. Alrighty. All right. Looks like there's a word problem that we're going to have to work through. So this says the cost to buy tickets online for a dance show is $60 per ticket. Part A says write a function that represents the cost C of X in dollars for X tickets to the show. All right, and hopefully you remember this from the previous unit, but I start off with that C of X. That's my fancy Y. And then I go, all right, well, this says the cost to buy tickets online for a dance show is $60 per ticket. That hopefully tells you that means multiplication. So you do 60 times X. There's your first equation. Then part B says there is a sales tax of 5.5% and a processing fee of $8 for a group of tickets. Write a function that represents the total cost T of A for a dollars spent on tickets. All right, so it says to use T of A. So that's what I'm gonna start off with, T of A. And I know if A is the dollar spent on tickets, so that would just be my A. So there we go. And I know there's a 5.5% processing fee on that. So we got to turn that into a decimal. But then you also have the 100% of this. So if you've ever done sales, then you know that you have the 1 and then the processing fee. This means that's 100% of your tickets plus an additional 5.5% of that would be your grand total. This would be the same thing like if you get like a 15% tip. To figure that out, you just take your result and multiply by 1.15 to get your total answer. And then there's an $8. So we got this 5.5% taken care of, but there's this $8 processing fee. It doesn't say per or anything. So I'm going to go with that's just a one-time deal. So in this case, that's 1.055A plus $8. In the next question, it says now find T of C of X, right? So remember that your C of X was 60X and your T of X ended up being 1.055A plus 8. And if I want to find T of C of X, that's the same thing as T of C of X. So I'm going to plug in the C into my first function. That gives me 1.055 times 60x plus 8. Right? And then you can clean this up and you see that 1.055 times 60 is 63.3x plus 8. Right? Now, the next question, this is the last part of it. It says find T of C of 6 and interpret its meaning in the context of this problem. Okay, so again, T of C of 6 is the same thing as T of C of 6, which means take the 6, plug it into the C. So I'm going to take 60 times 6, and I get 360. And then the real question then becomes take 360 and plug it into your T of X, which was 1.055 times 360 plus 8. And that comes out to about 387.8. But it wants you to also interpret this. Well, that first X would be, we go all the way back. That first X was tickets. That's what we let X be. Buy the online tickets, $60. Let X represent the tickets to the show. So that means that 6 tickets. I can't spell tickets anymore. Tickets. There we go. So 6 tickets cost $387.80. Notice I put that 0 at the end. And that's it. All right, so there's a way that you can then apply that in a word problem. All right. Let's see. Let's do another one. Let's say I give you the answer. So let's say h of x is equal to f of g of x. And I tell you that h of x is equal to the 4th root of 9x minus 5. Okay. So here is the easiest thing. Identify the parent function. And that's basically take away all the numbers other than what's part of the function. And when you do that, if you take away the 9 and the minus 5, then you just have the 4th root of x. Right? So I basically took the 9 and the minus 5, and I was left with the x. But then if I want to then plug this in, I would then let g of x be that new function. So that would be just 9x minus 5. So I replace x with 9x minus 5, and I'm back to this point. Okay, so identify the parent function, and then your new function will be all the additional stuff. You don't have to put the whole 4th root on there, just the stuff that's different. And that's it. There's your f of x and your g of x. All right, there is, I believe, one more thing. Verify. to go through, and then this will wrap up the unit. All right. If I give you a graph, I'm going to again try my best here. Pretend that's a straight line. All right. Let's call this m of x. Let's call this p of x. All right. So what it's going to do, it's going to ask you a lot of questions. Let me write out all these questions. It's going to ask, what is m plus p of 1? It's going to ask you, what is p minus m of negative 4? It's going to ask you m over p of 3. It's going to ask you m times p of 3. It's going to ask you m of p, that's an open circle, of 0. It's going to ask you what is p of m of 0, again, open circle. And then it'll also ask you p of m of negative 4. All right, again, best thing to do is rewrite it. So rewrite this as m of 1 plus p of 1, and then go locate it. So here's 1. M is the purple, so that'd be 1, 2, 3, that'd be 4. So that'd be 4. P of 1, that's the orange, would be 2. So this would just be 4 plus 2, which gives you 6. Okay, because again, there was that first one, there was the next one. And then again, rewrite this one as P of negative 4 minus M of negative 4. So I'm going to go to negative 4. I'm going to go to the P, which was the green. So that'd be about right here. And that gives me 4. And then I go to M negative 4. So that's right here. And the M, let's see, it looks like negative 2 to me. And it is. It's roughly negative 2. And then 2 negatives make a positive. So that's 4 plus 2, which gives you 6. And then again, do this. This is M of 3 divided by P of 3. Go to 3, which is right here. Go to the M, which is about right here. And it looks like 2. Let me verify. It is 2. And then P of 3, well, here's P. And it looks like, it's supposed to be right here on the dot. So let's say that's 0. Can't divide by 0, so that means this is undefined. This is P time or M times P. So this would be M of 3 times P of 3. So again, I go to 3. M was 2. And P was 0. So 2 times 0 gives me 0. All right, now this is M of P. Okay, so this is going to be more interpreted as M of P of 0. So the way you want to work this is go locate where 0 is at P, which is right here. So that's now really M of 2. So now I'm going to go to 2, and I go to the M, which looks to be about 3. The answer there is 3. So you find out the inner one, and then you use that number to find the outer one. So again, this would be P of M of 0. So I'm going to go to 0. I'm going to go to M, which is, looks like 4. So this is what is P of 4. So then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go to P, and I see it's an open circle. That means it's not included in the set, so that means this is undefined. All right, and then the last one here, what color have I not used? I've already got it rewritten, so just go find out where -4 is for M. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. M is the purple one. That looks to be about like 2. So this is really what is P of 2. So then I come over here. 2 looks to be about 1. So the answer here is so I went to -4. Oh, almost messed up there. That's -2. So I need to go to -2 now. And then when I go to the P, which is right here, the answer is 4, not 1. So there's your answer. And that will wrap up Unit 2. Hope to see you tomorrow.